So then Abner, because he either can't believe that this would be such a big deal for Ishbosheth, or he is mad about being accused of something like this that he maybe didn't do, he gets mad at Ishbosheth and decides, alright, well, after all I've done for you and your family for years, if this is how you're going to treat me, then forget it. I'm out of here. I'm going to go help David. What's up, cool people? My name's Matt. Welcome back to our Bible study. Okay. So, we are looking at 2 Samuel chapter 3. Before this, Saul died. David returned to Judah. Was, dubbed king by the men of Judah. But meanwhile, Abner, Saul's, main commander or whatever, had taken one of Saul's sons that didn't die in the war and went elsewhere in Israel, declaring him as the new king. So, then it wasn't long before the armies of David and of Saul's son met and clashed, and that's where we get into chapter 3 here. So, here we go. 2 Samuel chapter 3. That was the beginning of a long war between those who were loyal to Saul and those loyal to David. As time passed, David became stronger and stronger, while Saul's dynasty became weaker and weaker. So that, obviously, being the previous events where the armies clashed. Over the course of time, David's influence, possibly his army. Anyway, it says David became stronger and stronger. Saul's dynasty became weaker and weaker. In what all ways exactly, it doesn't say here, but yeah, just know opposing trends of Saul's those who are loyal to Saul, and David and those who are loyal to him. Okay. So then I'll move on to verse 2 here. These are the sons who were born to David in Hebron. The oldest was Amnon, whose mother was Ahinoam from Jezreel. The second was Daniel, whose mother was Abigail, the widow of Nabal from Carmel. The third was Absalom, whose mother was Maacah. Hope that's a decent pronunciation there, I don't know. The daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. The fourth was Adonijah, whose mother was Haggith. The fifth was Shephatiah, whose mother was Abital. Sixth was Ithream, whose mother was Eglah, David's wife. These sons were all born to David in Hebron. Yeah, names. But anyway. And I think it literally said all of these were from different wives. That's a thing we find in the Old Testament. Not that it's God's ideal. In fact, most of the situations where there are, multiple spouses on one side or the other, usually it was one man with multiple wives. Most situations like that we find, there winds up being some conflict and things not going so great because of that. Also, there's a little note here. It says, as in parallel, okay, so that's just saying the same thing comes up in 1 Chronicles, chapter 3, verse 1. But the original Hebrew reads Kiliab instead of Daniel. I mean, when push comes to shove, these are just names. Now, I know there was generally some sort of meaning of the Hebrew names in particular, but I'm not studied enough to know that offhand. In any case, I guess, that's was one of 6 different sons that were born to David while he was in Hebron. That was like the region of Judah that he had moved into upon his return. And notice none of these is Solomon, like the most famous son of his who winds up becoming king later. But anyway. Alright. Moving along to verse 6 here. As the war between the house of Saul and the house of David went on, Abner became a powerful leader among those loyal to Saul. One day, Ishbosheth, Saul's son, accused Abner of sleeping with one of his father's concubines, a woman named Rizpah, daughter of Aiah. Abner was furious. "Am I some Judean dog to be kicked around like this?" he shouted. "After all, I have done for your father Saul and his family and friends... After all I have done for your father Saul and his family and friends by not handing you over to David, this is my reward? That you find fault with me about this woman? May God strike me and even kill me if I don't do everything I can to help David get what the Lord has promised him. I'm going to take Saul's kingdom and give it to David. I will establish the throne of David over Israel as well as Judah, all the way from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south." Alright, pausing there for a sec. So, Abner was the, commander of Saul who had basically promoted or told the people that Ishbosheth was the next king after Saul. But now there's tension between Abner and Ishbosheth. Whether or not this is true, it hasn't really outright stated. It just says Ishbosheth accused him. So then Abner, because he either can't believe that this would be such a big deal for Ishbosheth, or he is mad about being accused of something like this that he maybe didn't do, he gets mad at Ishbosheth and decides, alright, well, after all I've done for you and your family for years, if this is how you're going to treat me, then forget it. I'm out of here. I'm going to go help David. Footnote kind of thing there next to Ishbosheth is another name for Eshbaal. So the Baal part obviously had some significance because of previous mentions of Baal idols being worshipped throughout really just Israel at times and people groups around Israel. So it's possible Saul named this son of his after a deity that was not the Lord, the God of Israel. But, anyway, again, kind of name semantics that just, most of those are just kind of there to say, hey, here's what it said, or maybe what it originally said, just so you know we're doing our best to be accurate with this. So now Abner is vowing to go help David. Then we get to verse 11. Ishbosheth didn't dare say another word because he was afraid of what Abner might do. Then Abner sent messengers to David saying, "Doesn't the entire land belong to you? Make a solemn pact with me, and I will help turn over all of Israel to you. All right, David replied. But I will not negotiate with you unless you bring back my wife Michal, Saul's daughter, when you come. David sent this message to Ishbosheth, Saul's son. Give me back my wife Michal, for I bought her with the lives of 100 Philistines. So Ishbosheth took Michal away from her husband, Palti, son of Laish. Palti followed along behind her as far as Bahurim, weeping as he went. Then Abner told him, Go back home. So Palti returned. So, yeah, David had initially married Saul's one daughter, Michal, because Saul basically struck a deal with him in order to, well, A, get rid of some of the Philistines, which he absolutely hated, or who he absolutely hated, I should say, but also to try and, like, lure David into some sort of trap wherein he would have an easier opportunity to kill David and not have David take over his throne. But then after David fled from Saul and basically lived as a fugitive for a while, Saul wound up having his daughter Michal marry somebody else. Just because David was gone. Physically. So, and I guess part of the way that David was able to escape was because of Michal giving him a warning, also being able to, you know, talk with some of the people who were loyal to Saul that were chasing after David at that time. So that's at least part of the reason why Michal wouldn't have been able to go with David when he escaped. But anyway, so in all this, Abner says he wants to join David's forces or help him. David's like, all right, but bring me back my rightful wife, Saul's daughter. And I guess Ishbosheth, because he was basically afraid of what Abner would do to him, agreed to that arrangement, and I guess maybe had Michal go sort of along with Abner. Anyway, in that whole situation, Michal was sent to David, and her husband at that time followed along, basically sad at the loss of his wife, but then once he got close enough, Abner's like, okay, look, you've gone far enough, you got to go back. A couple other notes here. Yeah, so right here it says that David, you know, bought marriage to Michal with the lives of 100 Philistines. The arrangement was actually 100 Philistine foreskins, if you could go back, but that was pretty much just a sign of him killing those 100 Philistines. And then, note at Palti here says, as in 1 Samuel 25:44, Hebrew reads Paltiel, variant spelling. Same person though. I guess it just might have been spelled a little different at this particular moment, or maybe in both. I don't know for sure. I don't remember back to that chapter if it had a note like this. But anyway, okay. Moving along to verse 17, I guess. Meanwhile, Abner had consulted with the elders of Israel. For some time now, he told them, you have wanted to make David your king. Now is the time. For the Lord has said, I have chosen David to save my people Israel from the hands of the Philistines and from all their other enemies. Abner also spoke with the men of Benjamin. Then he went to Hebron to tell David that all the people of Israel and Benjamin had agreed to support him. When Abner and 20 of his men came to Hebron, David entertained them with a great feast. Then Abner said to David, let me go and call an assembly of all Israel to support my lord the king. They will make a covenant with you to make you their king, and you will rule over everything your heart desires. So David sent Abner safely on his way. So, Abner making good on what he said is actually like talking to elders and basically significant people throughout Israel and saying, hey, all right, you want David to be your king? Let's go. Let's do this thing. And he, despite his previous opposition to David, mostly because of his loyalty to Saul and Saul's family, that got ruined because of this whole trouble with Ishbosheth. Now he's equally as adamant about supporting David, it seems. And this also says, at least by this point, that he is aware that David was chosen by the Lord to be king. Whether or not he knew before, it is never stated. But we know for sure, at least at this point, that he knows David's supposed to be king, as per the word of God. So, yeah, he's basically going around campaigning for David now. Okay. Moving on to verse 22. But just after David had sent Abner away in safety, Joab and some of David's troops returned from a raid, bringing much plunder with them. When Joab arrived, he was told that Abner had just been there visiting the king and had been sent away in safety. Joab rushed to the king and demanded, "What have you done? What do you mean by letting Abner get away? You know perfectly well that he came to spy on you and find out everything you're doing." That might be Joab kind of flashing back to that previous conflict that, you know, David's forces had with Ishbosheth's, during which Abner had killed Joab's one brother. It was kind of a self-defense move on Abner's part, because Joab's brother was, like, literally just chasing after him, not letting him be. So there might have been some bitterness between Joab and Abner there. Might still be. As we're, you know, as of this point in the reading. But also, could just be that Joab doesn't know that Abner wanted to help David at this point. So anyway, on to verse 26. Joab then left David and sent messengers to catch up with Abner, asking him to return. They found him at the well of Sirah, and brought him back, though David knew nothing about it. When Abner arrived back at Hebron, Joab took him aside at the gateway as if to speak with him privately. But then he stabbed Abner in the stomach and killed him in revenge for killing his brother Asahel. Again, pronunciations of the names I'm not totally sure on. So, yeah, that right there. Revenge for killing Joab's brother. And apparently David knew nothing about Abner coming back at that time. So Joab basically acted before David even had a chance to stop it. Verse 28. Making sure I didn't miss any footnotes there. Nope. Okay. When David heard about it, he declared, I vow by the Lord that I and my kingdom are forever innocent of this crime against Abner, son of Ner. Joab and his family are the guilty ones. May the family of Joab be cursed in every generation with a man who has open sores or leprosy, or who walks on crutches, or dies by the sword, or begs for food. So Joab and his brother Abishai killed Abner because Abner had killed their brother Asahel at the battle of Gibeon. But David wanted to officially declare that that was not what he wanted, and speaks a curse upon Joab and their family, just to further emphasize that point, I guess. So let's see here. Note at leprosy there says, or a contagious skin disease. Hebrew word used here can describe various skin diseases. So yeah, in case you didn't know, leprosy might have been a bit of a catch-all term for a lot of different, like, skin conditions. But generally the kind that are actually problematic, not just some sort of genetic skin discoloration. So I shouldn't say that like I'm totally sure of it, but I mean, it says diseases here, and disease usually sort of implies, you know, actual, like, harmful stuff. But also, or who walks on crutches. Okay, hold up. The note here says, or who is effeminate. Hebrew reads, who handles a spindle. Handling a spindle generally would have been something females did more. Like, you know, sewing, weaving, those kinds of things. So, shoot, whether, I mean, in that kind of society, whether female or crippled, both generally had disadvantages over able-bodied men in that kind of culture. Not saying they're equivalent, but basically David is wishing misfortune upon Joab and his family for throughout time, essentially. Okay. Moving along to verse 31 now. Still got about 8 or 9 verses to go here. Anyway, okay, verse 31. Then David said to Joab and all those who were with him, tear your clothes and put on burlap. Mourn for Abner. And King David himself walked behind the procession to the grave. They buried Abner in Hebron, and the king and all the people wept at his graveside. Then the king sang this funeral song for Abner. Should Abner have died as fools die? Your hands were not bound, your feet were not chained. No, you were murdered, the victim of a wicked plot. All the people wept again for Abner. David had refused to eat anything on the day of the funeral, and now everyone begged him to eat. But David had made a vow, saying, May God strike me and even kill me if I eat anything before sundown. This pleased the people very much. In fact, everything the king did pleased them. So everyone in Judah and all Israel understood that David was not responsible for Abner's murder. Then King David said to his officials, Don't you realize that a great commander has fallen today in Israel? And even though I am the anointed king, these two sons of Zeruiah, Joab and Abishai, are too strong for me to control. So may the Lord repay these evil men for their evil deeds. So, even though David wishes ill upon them, he's kind of saying their behavior is out of his hands, thus wishing the Lord to handle them. Or it could also have been a way of saying that, look, if these guys did something bad, it was not my wish, but clearly they aren't just going to follow my wishes. At the same time, though, I'm not going to be the one responsible for continuing the violence or conflict or whatever that's going on here. I don't know. Either way, this says to me that David is not directly seeking to, pay back Joab and Abishai for killing Abner. So, anyway, this is now the second song also in this section. This is the second song that David has made in mourning of a prior enemy of his. He had a song for Saul and Jonathan, back in the first chapter of 2 Samuel, and now there's this for Abner. So, David is, even though he has been very successful in combat and things of that sort, he's also a bit of an artistic type. I mean, if you go to Psalms, there are a lot of Psalms that were actually written by David. But anyway, I digress. So yeah, David just mourning the loss of Abner because Abner basically was A, a really good commander, who was B, seeking to help him at that time. And he knew that Abner was loyal. I mean, he stuck with Saul through all the things that had happened previously, even to the point of trying to get Saul's son instated as king after Saul. So then when Abner, made a pact with David, and then David basically lost the benefits of that, it's a bit of a blow. Certainly from, like, a, military command and strategy standpoint. And just to further emphasize David not having anything to do with the planning there, and the fact that he, was mourning the loss of Abner, he refused to eat that day. But it was just for that day. People were getting concerned about him not eating, but he's like, look, I'm not going to eat before sundown. It doesn't directly say that he planned on eating right after that, but I guess it was a way to kind of ease the people's minds a little bit that it wasn't like a longer term decision of his. So anyway, alright. That's about all I got for 2 Samuel chapter 3. Okay, so, while reading through this chapter, I mean, I assumed Abner was being genuine, especially given the fact that it mentioned him actually going around talking to people and saying, hey, let's, get David this kingdom here. But, yeah, some people didn't seem to think he was being genuine, or they just didn't know any better. In any case, yeah, I mean, if Abner didn't have that change of heart shortly before he died, it probably would have seemed like generally a good thing, but maybe a little less so under the circumstances that developed. But anyway, so, as always, like and share if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel, click the bell if you're on YouTube to get updates when I post new videos. If you're seeing this anywhere else, give me a follow or whatever you got to do there. Speaking of following, look down in the description for info on social media pages and links to find and follow those. And leave comments down below all that with any thoughts you have. So that'll do it for now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you soon for another video. But whatever the case is, till next time, stay cool, people.